Hello everyone, we are back for part 2 of The Alchemy of Happiness by Al-Ghazali. Last video we explained the questions that you have to answer in order to know who you are. We also explained what the human being is, like that it has two parts, soul and body, and also the column cosmological argument of where do we come from. We answered those questions and we actually concluded from the infinite causal change that if we were to be here right now, if we were to accept that we are in existence right now, then we cannot help concluding that God exists because infinite causal chains are impossible. And now we know that God exists. Now we have to know God better. One of the ways to know God is by examining ourselves, like it is repeated countlessly in the Quran. Al-Ghazali says that human beings only needs to look in themselves and think about how they are and also look out and see how things are created to know that he exists. So God tells us to look into ourselves, and one of the ways we can look at ourselves is the way our soul is. Al-Ghazali actually argues that the soul is invisible and indivisible, like God is. It is in control of our kingdom, like God is in control of the universe. So, in that sense, we can look at ourselves and we can conclude and we can see a little bit of how God operates, basically. So, we don't need to see Him because most people will be like, oh, yeah, God doesn't exist because I never saw Him. Like, you never see your conscience, but it exists. We have this thing called the hard problem of consciousness that we cannot actually pinpoint exactly where consciousness is in our body, but it still exists. Consciousness is what we are calling here our soul. So this is one of the ways you can think about it. So our soul is the king of our body. God is the king of the universe. We cannot see our souls. We cannot see God. Our soul is indivisible. God is indivisible. So, but the soul is not part of the body because how can something that is invisible, indivisible, higher be part of something that is finite? Like God also is not part of this world because this world is finite. It started 4 billion years ago, and God is infinite. So infinite cannot be part of the finite. We also live forever. Our soul has a starting point, but even after our death, it still continues to exist. So we can think of that like if you know yourself, you will know God. This is one of the ways you can do that. So if you know that I've already made the argument, I don't need to repeat it, but you can also think of how perfectly created you are, and that will reflect how God is wise and all powerful, because Al-Ghazali also says that you can put together all the scientists, all the sages in this world, and they would not come up with a better way to make a human body just like it is created right now. You cannot change anything to make it more perfect, if that's possible. It's not possible to do so. So that gives you an idea of how wise and knowledgeable God is and how all powerful He is, because He gives you provision and everything. So, as far as the first step goes, it leads directly to the second step. The knowledge of self leads directly to the knowledge of God, because once you know that you're helpless and you come from nothing and you have no control, and that actually leads directly to the fact that yeah, God exists, because you did not create yourself. The universe is not eternal. The universe did not create itself. So that's it. Now, still on the same chapter, knowledge of God, Al-Ghazali actually argues that after knowing God in that sense, that the only way you can now disobey, for example, to actually go against God is through ignorance. So the first one is like people who say, okay, I cannot see God, so He doesn't exist. And then we actually already dealt with that question. Like, you don't need to see God in order to know that He exists. Just like you do not see your consciousness, but it exists. So it's a ridiculous argument to begin with. You don't even need to bother with it. So another group of people will just say, yeah, God created the universe, but it doesn't care anymore. What if we sin? It doesn't matter to God. And we are like, yeah, it doesn't. But it's like a doctor prescribing you a medication. If you do not take the medication, it doesn't matter to the doctor, it doesn't hurt the doctor, but you are hurting yourself. So if you do not obey God's commands, Ghazali argues, you are hurting yourself. You are hurting your own soul. Like, we will be talking about that in the next chapters, like the fourth chapter about the hereafter. You'll see exactly how it hurts yourself if you go against that. We have another group that says that, yeah, I am so high up in my saintliness that sin does not affect me. So I don't even need to do anything. Sin does not touch me because I'm a saint. And Ghazali says that, yeah, the prophets also always prayed to ask God for forgiveness, to forgive their sins, even though they're prophets. So those people who argues that they are above sins, are they better than prophets? Are they better? Like, that is the question. Are you better than the prophets? So even if the prophets are praying for God to protect them from committing sins, who are you to say that you are above committing sins? That is another group. Another group also says that, okay, yeah, we have the animal part, we have the angelic part, but we cannot suppress the animal part. Why would you tell us to get rid of our passions? Uh, we cannot abstain. We cannot get rid of them because we are created with them. Abstinence is impossible. So the argument is, we never said that. Al Ghazali says, we never said that you should get rid of them, but you should control them with your reason. Basically, you should submit to how God told you to use those passions. Like, you are created with them. You cannot help having them, of course, but you can control them. So there is this showman that people actually make when they are talking about religious rules. They think that religion actually tells you to suppress your passion, to not have fun. And then it's like, no, it's like, control it is what is said. Don't get it out of control. But it's never told you, they never say that you have to suppress it. You do not have to have pleasure or act revengefully. Just use it when it is appropriate. And how do you know when it is appropriate? It is to ask what God says about these things. So you have to submit to the will of God in order to control your passions in the way God wants it. That's it. Lastly, like, last part of this series, we have the chapter 3, which is knowledge of this world. You have to know that this world is like a witch that actually casts a spell upon us and makes it look like it's beautiful, eternal. But once you get rid of the spell that you are uh, affected with, you see that it's just an ugly old woman lying around, just, very ugly stuff. You have to know that it's ephemeral, it dies, you die, and that is basically it. So, forgetting that, and this word will do everything in order to make you forget that it's temporary. You have to always keep that in mind. So that is it. You have to know that this word is ephemeral. It is just a pilgrimage for you to get a bunch of good deeds in and then carry them with you in the hereafter. So here is the place for you to do good, and those are the only thing that will last. If you do bad, also those things also last. So this word is a test, basically, and temporary. It has a time limit. So the fourth chapter is about the knowledge of the hereafter. So after this world, where do you go? After your body dies, your soul actually persists. Your soul is eternal, it doesn't die. So after that, you go into the hereafter. So one of the things that will be in the hereafter before even the judgment day is that if you were focused on this world too much, then those will be the the love of this world will be a punishment for you in the hereafter. So people who actually focus on God for the most part will be at peace in the hereafter, and then people who love this world will be in torture, because even though they do not realize it here right now, when they pass on, they will see that, yeah, they lived life like this world was the eternal one. So now that they don't have this world, they miss it so bad, it hurts them. It's like the 99 snakes that was talked about. When you go into your grave, it's not like physical snakes that will torture the unbeliever, but like spiritual snakes. They're always there. You just don't realize that you love this world so much. You forget about the hereafter. And then when you go on to the hereafter, you miss this one. That is a form of torture for eternity that you will be under, according to Ghazali. And also the next chapter, chapter 5, is about music. Al-Ghazali here is different from many other scholars because he actually is for music. It tells us that music is neutral. Music only amplifies what is already in your heart. If you had the love of God in your heart, music will make you love God more because it's harmony. It has music as an effect on us. We cannot explain it, but it's beautiful. It tells us, Al Ghazali tells us that it comes from the spiritual world, and we enjoy it because we come from the spiritual world too. So it's nothing wrong with the music itself. If you have sin in your heart, music will amplify that sin. So music itself is not bad according to Al Ghazali. That's his argument. And he has a couple of hadith that he uses to support this. You can read the book to find them out, or I can just tell you one of them right now. There was this festival one day, and a little girl was singing inside the Prophet, peace be upon him, inside of his house. And the first caliphate, Abu Bakr, came in and tried to chase the little girl, but the Prophet told him to leave the girl alone because it's festival day. So that's one of the hadiths that he uses to support the music argument. Like it's not bad, it's okay, it's neutral. And if you do not have good or bad, it's indifferent. If you do not have good intention in your heart, music will just amplify it. That's it. And the next chapter is about marriage. So marriage also is a double-edged sword. It can be good, it can be bad. And also he cites some advantages of marriage. For example, when you know that you are going to commit sins if you do not get married, you know that your passions, you cannot control them totally. You have to get married in order to not fornicate, basically. That's it. And if you want, you know that you can go without it, then you do not need to. Because one of the disadvantages of marriage also if you cannot take care of your family in a proper manner, if you do not win your living honestly, then your family can be a source of hell. It can be a source of damnation. So you have to make sure that you take care of your family, but in a good way. If you cannot do that, you better not get married. But if you know also that if you do not get married, you will commit sins, you better get married. So that is basically it. Thank you.